Wells, and this is part 4 of The Cult of Beauty. I was in high school from 1967 to 1971, which means I was a teenager during a time of turmoil in America. Bobby Kennedy, Martin Luther King Jr., and Malcolm X were assassinated. The USS Pueblo and crew were seized by North Korea and held as prisoners for a year. There were violent riots in cities across the country, Chicago, Los Angeles, and Birmingham. And all along, the Vietnam War escalated with each passing year. Friends, families, and political environment itself were divided regarding the war. The country faced the largest division since the Civil War in 1865. I knew boys that went off to war and returned as somber-faced men. My first real boyfriend was a Vietnam vet, which I will write about in a later blog. But this returns me to Nixon. But I'd like to float one more idea before I dive into Nixon's legacy, and that is the notion of hungry ghosts. In Buddhism, a hungry ghost is a part of the personality that is a bottomless pit in which the identity feels lacking. It could be admiration from others, or money in the bank, or owning things. A clue to someone's hungry ghost is look to see of what they have an abundance. Is it awards, military medals, followers on social media, even educational degrees? Most people get a handle on their hungry ghost, and sometimes by allowing small bites throughout their lifetime. But for others, the ghost is a trap and the feeding frenzy begins. When I started writing this section, I was prepared to bash Nixon. I wondered, how did a guy like that rise to power? And after weeks of research, my compassion for him has grown. He graduated from Duke University with a law degree, and in 1942, he enlisted in the Navy Reserve. And during the war, he was stationed in the Pacific Theater and remained at port to manage supplies. To pass the time, he played poker with the soldiers before they shipped off for battle. Poker with soldiers that are about to face fierce fighting is a cutthroat game. They have nothing to lose. Nixon learned to win and over time managed to send home to his mother around $6,000. And that would be about $86,700 in today's money. After the war in 1946, he won a Republican congressional seat in the House of Representatives, and by 1950 was elected California State Senator. In 1952, he became vice president under Dwight Eisenhower. That is a remarkable rise by anyone's standards. And one thing repeated many times about Nixon was his discipline. Vigorously prepared, he read every bill and issue before the House and Senate and was able to speak effectively about them at a moment's notice. But there were costs to his ambition. He drank heavily and took a drug called Dilantin for back pain and insomnia. In 1960, he ran against Democratic candidate John Kennedy for president, and he lost by a very small margin. A crazy 10,000 votes made the difference to give Kennedy the win. And there were reports of voter fraud, but Nixon showed courage and understood that the country needed a clean win to believe in the system. Publicly, he graciously conceded to Kennedy. Privately, he vowed to return and win. And that became his mission when he ran for president in 1968. He mustered all his political savvy, both public and private underhanded ways. His opponent was Democrat Hubert H. Humphrey. On a side note, how many H's do you need in a name? Quick history reminder. Humphrey was vice president under Lyndon B. Johnson, and Johnson had inherited the Vietnam War, and in an effort to end it, escalated it. My father, a World War II vet, watched the news from 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. Monday through Friday. And at the time, I was a young teen, 14 to 17, and was horrified watching the clips of bloodied soldiers pulled out of harm's way, helicopters crashing into the jungle and firebombs blasting villages night after night on the television. I can only guess it was part of my father's self-inflicted sense of duty to keep abreast of current events. And so we watched. Anyway, back to Nixon, also known as Tricky Dicky, a name, in my opinion, he deserved, and his second bid for president. He used connections to secretly sabotage the 1968 Paris peace talks. It was set up to help resolve the Vietnam War, and Nixon used back channels to ask that the delegates from South Vietnam walk away from the table. They did, and that move eroded public confidence in the Democratic Party's ability to end the war. Nixon won in 1968, but again, not by a large margin. The margin is important as it sets up in motion his actions in the coming years. When Nixon was elected, the Republican Party scored a banner year. Contributions grew in the upcoming years. Crazy amounts of cash stuffed in shoeboxes, folded in brown paper bags, and stacked in briefcases were silently dropped off at Republican offices. For his reelection, Nixon couldn't merely win. He needed a landslide. And every action he and his team did in the year prior for his reelection was geared to that desire. It was something Nixon's ego demanded. Hungry ghost? Maybe. That's it.